All right, welcome back. The next 2 weeks, we'll learn about mental flexibility and how it can help us look at situations differently. Let's get started. So this week, there are 3 short videos for you to watch to help you understand the information on mental flexibility, and specifically with regards to examining optimism versus pessimism as an explanatory style. To wrap us up, we'll look at how we can change pessimistic thinking into learned optimism. So, mental flexibility is basically the ability to look at things differently, and perception is a key component. One of the ways that we can practice this is by looking at challenges optimistically. When we do this, we challenge pessimistic ways of thinking and create hope for things to improve. And so, optimism is something that we can learn. So, before we get started, take a moment and consider this question. How optimistic are you? Are you very optimistic, somewhat optimistic, slightly optimistic? Maybe you're not optimistic at all, or maybe you're not unsure, you haven't considered it yet. Just keep that with you as we go through this presentation. So this slide shows the why for cultivating optimism. Research shows that being more optimistic is associated with living longer, healing faster, and experiencing less depression and anxiety. Becoming more optimistic can also increase resiliency and motivation and improve self-esteem. This also, of course, improves our physical and mental health and well-being. So now let's look at some explanatory styles. Explanatory styles are the way in which we explain the good and bad things that happen in our world. According to the father of positive psychology, Dr. Martin Seligman, your explanatory styles stem directly from your view of your place in the world, whether you think you are valuable and deserving or worthless and hopeless. It's the hallmark of whether you are an optimist or a pessimist. So let's take a look at the 3 different explanatory styles. So this chart will help you visualize the dimensions of optimistic and pessimistic explanatory styles. So there are 3, and they are known as the 3 Ps: permanence, pervasiveness, and personalization. For today, we're gonna examine, or for this video, we're going to examine permanence, and the next video will examine pervasiveness. Personalization is important as well, but it's connected with self-esteem and depression. So we're not going to spend much time on that this week, but it is part of the explanatory styles. So permanence is the first dimension that we're going to examine, and we'll look at it in regards to negative and positive events that happen in our lives. Permanence as a dimension means that a person sees events that occur in their life as either permanent or temporary. A person who experiences a bad event in their life and views things as permanent will believe that the event will last forever or for a really long time, and that bad events will continue to happen. And on the contrary, a person who views situations as not being permanent will believe the events are temporary. So let's look at a few examples. So as you read through these, notice that there is a theme that emerges in the language being used. You may have noticed that the permanent examples use what is referred to as permanent language: always and never. Studying never works, or I'll never pass math. While the temporary examples do not. Some subjects I might struggle in, or I didn't pass the math test, I'll try to pass the next one. The language that we use impacts our understanding of the world and gives us an explanation for the events that are happening in our lives. Let's look at permanence with regards to positive events. Simply put, We want positive events to continue and be long lasting. So, in this sense, it's just the opposite of what we saw when we looked at the negative events. People who believe good events will be permanent are more optimistic than those who see these events as temporary. And here's a few examples to give you an idea. So notice here, so I'm always lucky, I'm talented at writing, I'm a good student, are examples of optimistic thinking. Well, it's just my lucky day. Or that paper was easy. My classes were easy this semester. Those are examples of more pessimistic thinking. So these examples help us to see how the optimist explains the causes for good events as permanent, and the pessimist dismisses those causes for good events as being temporary. Here's a visual to compare the dimensions with regards to both negative and positive events that we just discussed. The goal here is to challenge permanent language and use temporary language when describing challenging situations in order to cultivate optimism. The more you do this, the more you train your brain to think this way. So now that we've explored the first explanatory style, please watch the next video on pervasiveness.